Hi, everyone. Welcome back to First Principles. We've got a repeat guest today. We've got Vadym. Hi, Vadym. How are you doing?
Hello, Saagar. I am doing very well. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. We had a long pre-call today, so we've decided that we'll be talking about business case, but we'll also touch upon related concepts in a deep and fundamental level, like what business is and what a business model is. And the discussion can veer off in other allied directions, but this is where we want to keep it. So rather than with that, the floor is yours. Let's start with what do you think at a very fundamental level a definition of business is?
Thank you, Sagar. We spoke that you we focus on people who do usually business on their own, small
Hmm,
businesses.
hmm,
So when my parents are entrepreneurs, and when I spoke with them and other people in the community, people define separate business and hobby. So I'm not talking about definition of business from the big business perspective.
Well, we
So
can come to that
when
later, but yeah, about
yeah,
this.
so from
Yeah.
this, when from perspective of small businesses, you can
Hmm,
do hobby when the majority of value is comes from paying yourself a salary. So you
hmm.
kind of like buying yourself a job. And
Okay.
many franchises are to some degree franchise businesses are to some degree this kind of buy yourself a job,
Hmm,
and you don't try to make additional value out more than your salary. So probably you
hmm,
can get your salary in other places, but
hmm,
here is you don't have a boss, you just your own boss, and you just
hmm,
enjoy it. And your main value, your main reason to do business that you love it.
hmm,
Whereas actual business is when you generate additional value beyond your own salary. And that's when you don't think about yourself as an employee. You don't think about business. It's something which gives cash, but something like that as a mechanism and place where you are replaceable. And this business needs to operate without your own salary. And it is okay that you don't enjoy it as long as it's making money and serve your own purposes. For example, if you want to resell it, or maybe there are some synergies between this business and something else. Let's imagine you have real estate and it's very hard to rent it. Then you can open business and find a way to generate additional value on top of your rent. And this would be an example of business. You don't do it because you enjoy it. You don't do it because you can't find a job. You do it because you want to generate additional value. And this value is defines the business. And the biggest value beyond these costs is a definition of business. This and business case is how much of additional value it generates, about additional expected operational profit, above average costs, above also like value of your own time, how much
yeah.
true profitability it generates.
Okay. Okay. So let me see if I can summarize it. And it looks like I'll have to ask you a lot of follow-up questions based on this particular definition because I have a lot of threads that you've just given me. So you're saying that if somebody has a hobby and they like to do it, if they're just doing it without any commercial considerations, in the sense that they're funding it themselves, but it's most like a consumption product, then it's just a vocation. It's just a way to enjoy something that you like, but it's essentially consumption. If you're doing this and whatever comes out on the other end, the good, the service, the framework, if you sell it to somebody else, that is a hobby business, but you are essentially doing it because you like doing it. That's the motivating factor. And other motivating factors can be you don't want to do a job for somebody else and you want to be your own boss, whatever it is, but the motivation factor is different. Now, you would classify something as a business if that endeavor is trying to increase value for the intended customer. Increase value by how much? Different people have different things. Some people say the best thing is 10x, especially when it comes to startups. And if you're talking about extremely exponential tech, I don't know, a million x, like building like a flyover in a week or something automatically. Okay, so that is how a businessman thinks about it, or business person thinks about it. Increasing value. Now, what I want to ask is, you said somebody gets into it through increased value. Define get into it. Is that putting money? Is that getting people together? And if you don't have a skill set in a particular industry or a confluence of industry because you are trying something new, and you see an obvious opportunity of value creation, what do you do?
I think so. You're asking, should I start a new business? There are a bunch of questions you want to ask. Is
So
it
should I
right
should I
business?
start? Sorry. I'm
I'm
very sorry.
listening.
Sorry. Should I start a new business if I do not have the core practitioner skill set? Not for the business, but the core skill set for whatever the service is. Sorry
Yeah,
about that. Yeah.
yeah. So it may be okay to start a business when you don't have core skill sets because you can hire people. But there are a couple of things which might be necessary. For example, if you are starting a business, being a good in operations, being good in marketing, or being good in sales might be necessary. And there could be a bunch of other things. Maybe you don't have experience in this industry, but you have experience in a similar industry and you have transferable skills or transferable experiences. For example, you might, if you're building a tech product, you need to build something in the past, otherwise you wouldn't be successful. If you're starting a retail business, you need experience managing the retail operations, and if you don't have it, you just would lose. So the question is, what are your skill sets, and would you be better than other people in a similar role? You might not know the new industry, but you at least need to have those skill sets, which you can leverage and have unfair advantage versus others. And with that unfair advantage, you can generate that additional value, which other people can't. And another thing in the same vein is that you probably try to solve some problems which other people can't solve. So you probably need either knowledge of those problems, or you need access to people who know problems in these new industries well. So maybe you want to build an innovative retail business. You need to know what type of clients have problems in retail and what type of solutions are needed. So probably you need to have access to experts in retail who worked in the industry and saw that other companies in this industry didn't solve those problems. I'll give an example. I live right now in Quincy, and there are supermarkets everywhere, and all small supermarkets are dying, and most of them can't survive. They look like from 80s, but there are a couple of people in the area who reinvented themselves, and I saw a very nice person, very nice family. They have a supermarket. They are very selective about products. They always make sure they are safe, clean, nice, fresh, for example, fruits and vegetables. But their selling point are ready-made food, and they cook that food. And they proudly say, we make the best sandwiches. And they target young audiences who come there for the best ready-made food. They are cooking themselves. They offer the best soups. And when you come there, a lot of people just come there to have food. It's not a restaurant, it's not a
Yeah.
cafe. It's a place just to do shopping, but there's this selling point, and they
Yeah.
target specific demographics in specific place, and people go there, and they are next to a huge supermarket, but they
Yeah.
attract people from a supermarket to their store with
Yeah.
this value proposition. And you need to know how to develop this value proposition, and you either need to have access to people or spend a lot of time just researching, maybe half a year, sometimes a year. You just fund yourself just to learn about it. And some businesses emerge in this way, but you need a lot of money to get this knowledge.
Okay, so let's double click further on this. So the skill of being good at business, what are the skills? Sales, marketing, whatever kinds of marketing that you prevalently do. I suppose figuring out what your low leverage versus high leverage areas are, figuring out how to capture a particular market, how to spot a niche. But I think at the end of the day, would you agree with me that the whole point of the business is to solve other people's problems, but take a slight cut of the solution in the form of like whatever is being traded, which is typically money. Would you agree that that's the
I
fundamental?
agree.
Okay, all
I
right,
agree.
okay.
Usually, so your profit is coming that from that ability to solve the problem better than the others, and you capture a
Mm,
percent of that value. For example,
mm,
if you are Amazon, you sell I don't know, batteries, or you sell some kind of basic appliances or something else, just a couple of dollars cheaper. And
mm,
this couple of dollars cheaper, you capture some percentage of that. And that
mm,
percentage, those percentages would become your profit. This is
mm,
a usual, essentially is a business model about which we
mm.
talked before we started the recording.
Yeah. So if you think about it, if you compare this to doing a job, yes, a job can be boring, and yes, it's very frustrating to find one, and yes, it's easy. A good society where there are like these off-the-shelf jobs where you can just go and get a job for whatever minimum level of skill you have, and you can live a decent level life. And if you want, you can rise up. Compared to starting a business, for most people, I think a job is way easier. It's boring, but it's easier. Would you? What would you think?
My wife dreams about starting a business, and we have a lot of discussions. And my parents are entrepreneurs, so I have completely different perspective. Uh, there are a lot of factors which need to come into play at the same time and play in your favor to start a business. Yes, you
Mm,
need some specific skills and experiences, but it well may not be enough, and you can lose a lot of money and put yourself in a pretty bad situation
mm,
if you don't understand well where you start, what you do, why you do it, why you can survive, and have a kind of plan. And very frequently, just having a backup is very important. So having if your wife can support you if you become bankrupt, it maybe is the most important piece of actually starting a business. And it's
mm.
unsurprising that a lot of businesses are built by children of rich people who don't want to work for their parents. But the key there is that if they lose all the money, their parents would still pay. And this is very important because even if you will be better than other people, maybe your risk of losing money isn't 95%, but 70%. And it may
Yeah,
be good enough, but
yeah,
you still have very high chance that you would lose money in the end.
yeah,
And
yeah,
surviving for 1 year or even year and a half isn't enough to build
yeah.
business.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna challenge one received wisdom that people have given me, at least since I've been alive. That necessity is a mother of all invention, and maybe in some weird sort of linguistic, logical way they can prove it. But I want to give you an alternative value proposition. You said that uh, kids who have rich parents, they start businesses. If they fail, they have something to back up. So they'll probably have a trust fund which is invested in successful businesses, which is giving them something. It's not very wise to just start giving people chunks of your principal. That's how you lose generational wealth. But whatever. But I think at the end of the day, it does help if society is rich enough and can, without a lot of force, provide some level of backup and comfort. So, for example, like a national jobs guarantee or UBI, maybe not, but whatever. If you are anyways if your thought pattern is that you have no taxation, any old school 19th century model, fair enough, then mutual aid societies can come up. But if you're anyways taxing, reduce the taxes and be smart about the way you're deploying it. So having this kind of like people who are ambitious nowadays, I think people who can succeed in businesses because of luck, yes, but they're creative. They have access to capital, and they don't need to take a lot of risk because they're not putting their own money, which can go to zero, especially in very scary businesses like one movie or one startup, right? Because the failure rate is pretty high. But the thing is, we expect people to have a lot of grit as well and have no backup, and that should drive them in order to start a business. I think that drives people to criminality, that drives people to desperation. So if people can come up with some methods where risk taking is encouraged, but not to the extent where you have to like start, engage in pretty nasty activities. Anyway, that's just a long sort of tangent of me to say that just because a government is spending doesn't mean it's always bad for business. But yeah, anyway, okay. Let's also double click on one more aspect then. Let's say, and this is an example, a new city or a new suburb is kind of opening up. And somehow I am a regular guy working a regular job. Let's say I'm an analyst working for
Yeah.
some mid-sized bank. Somehow I figure out that there is a certain diaspora that is, like, I guess, nationally recognized, and they have certain tastes. So let's say South Asian, Mayan diaspora. They're moving to a particular suburb or a city, and it's projected that they're going to move in droves for 5 years because for whatever reason, for cultural reasons, family reunification reasons, whatever it is. Now, nobody knows it's going to absolutely happen, but this is a projected trend. Now, if I do my due diligence, I'm going to go and perhaps verify this trend and take the best case scenario. Nobody can tell me exactly if it's going to happen or not, but this is what I have. Now, I'm a person who doesn't live in that suburb but I'm kind of around it. I don't know how to cook. I don't even like cooking. I don't care, but I like to eat and I like to make money, right? So I figure out, I prepare a business case. I go to a bank to get a loan, or go to some kind of an investor to fund it, maybe like a 50-50 or like a 33-33 split. Get a co-founder who is a chef of, let's say, Indian food or South Asian food in general, because my justification is there's going to be demand. Will I get funded? What do you think? I don't like cooking, and I don't care about cooking, but I like making money. Will I get funded? And is my concept valid?
So you're talking about business case. It's when I'm talking about business case, I'm not usually talking about business case for you, the one who wants to do this business. And a completely different question is business case for people who would invest in you, whether it's a bank or someone else. So absolutely separate the two things. And
okay, but name similar things, but named in a similar way. Both of them are called business case, or one is business model to the other. So
but when people talk about business case, it means that create a business case for the bank or the investor or someone else.
For the investor, for the person giving the money.
But you need to create your own term sheet about how this business would look for you before you actually start creating business case for someone else.
Okay, understood. So it's the scenario I gave you as somebody who wants to be a founder of a restaurant, but doesn't want to be the chef. The question I asked you, you said that's not business case. I get it. But we can get to our business case isn't in one moment. But I guess,
for example, if you can select a type of financing, we can discuss how it would look like, what would be the requirements, what would be expectations. We can definitely discuss this.
Got it. But in a very generic way, as somebody who's hung around in places where these decisions are made, I'm saying, just asking a very particular question. The business case, let's assume it is sound. It is sound, right? And nobody else has come up with this to you at the moment. And, nobody's really talking about it at the moment. And I'm clearly early, but I am coming in early. But the most important part is I don't have the practitioner skill sets. I don't know how to organize the kitchen and how to start. But so I'm going to be relying on hiring a founder. But that basically hiring a founder or whatever, but that relies on the funding. So are such people funded, or do they only fund people who are practitioner founders?
Again,
not just idea founders.
You are talking about business model. You need to select what is a business model for this. As usually, probably the easiest for you would be a franchise business, not searching for a founder and not establishing it from scratch. Because without your skills in building the business, when you open a franchise, it wouldn't be super profitable, but you can start learning about this location, and you would develop a lot of necessary skills in the process. And probably to open a franchise business, they would ask you to be the CEO, and they would teach you how to operate it. And in the process, yes, you would essentially buy yourself a new job, because you would need to pay a lot of money in to buy a franchise, but in return they would teach and build everything, and you would start essentially as a founder and the CEO of this business in
Yeah.
return. And with this investment, many franchises would be willing to do this. You would need to be very selective about it, but and probably you need some startup cash, probably couple hundred K to do this. There are a couple of franchises which would start you without cash, but those are very selective. So you need to have exceptional skill set and maybe proven track record to do this. But other franchises who just need maybe 200-300K to start, and then you can buy and build everything. And you would need to create a business case for them, because the rest of the investment, they would need to invest with you. And yeah, you would need to provide maybe research, maybe other things. And probably the most important, you need to prove that you are the best person operationally, that maybe you didn't do it in a restaurant business, but maybe you run customer-facing businesses and auto operations in a similar way, because they are buying you as a person, and they would buy you to their business, and you would represent them in this location, and they would give you all this cash. You can start a business, not a franchise, but from zero, but you need then to have proven track record of running, creating restaurants. That's when you can find external investors. In many investors who, if you are not taking a loan, but you take equity, that's when they want your operational skills. You can take a loan, but then you take a lot of risks, and in most cases it is unjustified.
Right. So with a loan, the founder is reducing their risk because with the loan has to be paid back, unless the company declares bankruptcy. But with the equity, the founder is kind of transferring the risk, but the trade-off is they don't maintain 100% control. Even if, I don't know, maybe you structure the shares in a different way. Very famously, Facebook has that, where he's not the majority shareholder, but he still has management control. Zuckerberg. Okay. What do you see if somebody is coming to you with a presentation? As an investor, what are the questions that you're asking yourself? What are the questions that you're asking the presentation and the founder? And what are the hierarchy? What's the most important question? And the second most important question?
So you're essentially asking about creating a business, and you're talking about an equity investor. And probably you're talking VC, like maybe a wealthy person, or maybe angel investor. So it really depends on the type of business, but probably the list of questions would be fairly similar. It's just the depth and structure would be different. So if it is like opening a restaurant, is it a good market? Is it a good idea? So you need to show business model. You need to show what type of restaurant you need, why there is a need, how the unit economics would look like, that there is demand. This is the first question. Second, is you a right person? And you need to show your skill set, and you need to show that you can run it operationally, you have transferable experiences. And in many cases, you can't run it alone. You need a team, a minimum viable team, who are the right team. And very frequently, right team is more important than the right business. So they really need to love you, not like, but love you. And it's very important. It's very hard.
Okay.
The third is at the right timing, the right place, and there are good exit opportunities for investors and risks. So, for example, if it is a tech business, what's your potential for IPO or a similar exit? When would be the exit? Is it easy to fund this? Are there other investors who would fund like stages, expansions? So all those kind of things. It's kind of like business model for them, for the investor. I think even with these three, it's a good starting point.
Okay, interesting. So here we are basically seeing that there are skills about, one, is this going to be viable or not? At the end of the day, is there going to be enough demand or not? But again, even that, all of these things, it's predictions based on certain intuitions that you might have developed, some things that you would have studied, the past, history, whatever. But nobody really knows what's going to happen in the future, unless of course we're talking about situations where things are being fixed, and that's illegal. So at the end of the day, no matter how diligently an investor might fund or not fund a business case, there is an element of luck, right? There isn't, because it's not totally knowable. It's not an exact science. There is an element of mysticism attached to it. What do you think?
I would disagree. In practice, what I didn't mention, but it's very tightly connected to the previous 3 points. Essentially, you need evidence. And the harder the evidence, the better. And it could be many things. Or it could be like surveys of people. It could be hard information about demand in other restaurants. It could be financial statements of those restaurants. It could be that you have created like a minimum viable test experiment and you need to show economics. You can probably lease a local restaurant for a couple of months, turn it into the idea you have and just prove the economics. So maybe some restaurant is like closing and you just want to, before they close, hey, let me run it for a while and just want to prove the idea. And how many people are coming, what's the response rate. You send emails to people, see the response rate. You send maybe, you sell them promotional food in your restaurant, which didn't open. What's the willingness to pay. So you need hard evidence for all aspects of those business models. And you need aspects as a unit economics, you need aspects at marketing, you need for operations, at which prices you buy food, who would be your suppliers, how you generate marketing, what's the price per click, even for exits, what are exit opportunities for other restaurants if you, for example, want to sell it. How many people sold restaurants in this area in the past 5 years? What was the profitability? What was the multiples? So you need a lot of evidence, and the greatest amount of money, the later the stage, the harder the evidence you need to provide.
The higher the amount of money, the later the stage, the higher the evidence you need to provide. And I was about
Yeah,
to, as you were speaking, I was preparing counters in my head, but this line just made those counters irrelevant because I was about to say, what do you do if you don't have evidence? And at the end of the day, you also, in all the examples you gave me, yes, all of those things, the harder the research, the better. But
yeah,
then do understand that they are essentially creating a model about how essentially human beings who are complex creatures in themselves are
yeah,
going to interact with each other, and then emergent phenomena which they can't even think of what that will be is going to come up, right?
yeah.
So at the end of the day, let's at least, I don't know, like, would you agree with me that all of these things are good things to do in order to feel good about your bet? But at the end of the day, it's still a risk. It's still a bet. You can still go wrong. Things can still terribly go wrong. Nothing is for sure. So for the person who is funding it, how much are they punished for bad luck?
Best VCs expect 9 out of 10 of their startups to lose, and their expectations are sky roof tall and high
Hmm.
because they need to make like 15x on their only one surviving investment. And
Hmm.
if they it's a fund, there's like, let's imagine $250 million, that company need to make them $1 billion so that they over 10 years provide high return on investment
Yeah.
for those people. So
Hmm.
expectations, how successful your business should be, might be very hard. and there is like minimum viable scale in which people are willing to invest. And if you don't provide it, they would ask very, very high return on investment on your ideas, potentially unreasonably high.
What is minimum viable scale?
So I gave an example. So there are many VC ideas. If at the exit in like 10 years, they don't cost, this company doesn't cost $1 billion. No, VCs just would ignore you.
Right. Okay. Before I move on to the final section, just like I guess one more topic. Now, restaurants don't make as much money as scalable tech investments can. Typically, computing is very scalable, and they're trying to figure out how to do that in the world of atoms as well. I guess it's a hard times problem. I hope they solve it. It's going to make the world very wealthy. However, that's an aside. Restaurants also fail very often. A lot of restaurants fail. They don't make a lot of profit. I mean, I don't think their unit economics allows them to have a lot of margin. Why do restaurants keep opening? I mean, I understand startups where they can change the world. They're looking for things that nobody else is doing. But restaurants, they're not going to give you outsized investments, but people still keep starting them. What's the business logic then? Is it just desperation?
No, a lot of very different reasons.
Okay.
If you are a professional in this industry, you know how to make it profitable. There are a lot of people who open this business because they know how to make money out of it. And doesn't mean that this restaurant would exist forever. It can work for 5 years and make enough money. And it's your business. Your business is to create restaurants, not run the restaurants, but to create restaurants. And there are people who are good in this. They find their niches, they open restaurants, they work for 5 years, they close, and they open a new restaurant. And all this process is profitable.
Hold on. You're saying that there's a niche comes up, they open up a restaurant, they run it for 5 years, and then like a project, they close it, and then they run some other restaurant.
Yes.
So it's not that they sold off a restaurant, it's still running. The niche is gone.
Yeah, you can try to sell it, but very often restaurants, taste of people in the restaurant industry change very quickly. There are some trends, and trends just end, and after some time, the restaurant is just irrelevant. You don't have enough people. It's not profitable. If it's not profitable, it's very hard to sell. So you may not make any money on the sale of the business afterwards. So it really depends. So what we're discussing is a business model or the person creating businesses. Creating business is also a business, and the person may have their business model. The profit could be coming from operations, but it could be from sale. And creating business which creates cash day to day and business which create cash during the exit are two different businesses. They would look differently.
Tell me more about the person whose job is a business creator. Like, what did you say again? Let's talk about this person. How do you become this person? What does he do?
Probably to create these kind of businesses, you kind of like a CEO who attract VCs, but in restaurant industry, and your VCs are just wealthy individuals who want to invest in a restaurant. But you are a CEO and says, I will create. And to become a CEO who would create new businesses, probably you need to first be a CEO for a person who wants to create a business, and they just need a person who would run operations. So someone needs to probably first hire you in a regular role as a CEO, and after some experience of being a CEO, then you can try to create business rather than just run it. And to someone hire you as a CEO, you probably first need to get to that level to be the CEO of a restaurant company, probably running multiple restaurants at the same time. So it's a journey. So you can think about like a restaurant holdings or companies. For example, wealthy individuals, they have a network of restaurants. And when I mean network, I mean different restaurants. I mean, have 10 restaurants, and they need a CEO for this network. And they would be continuously creating new restaurants because they just love this. And then if you are running this network for a couple of years, like 5 years as a CEO, afterwards you can start creating restaurants on your own and find investors. But it's very hard to become a CEO of such a group of restaurants, and probably chefs are not the right people to get. So it's kind of complicated game, and you can be sure that there are so many people trying to become such CEOs, because this is like hype industry. It's kind of like the same as to be CEO in some sports industry or music industry or an arts industry. So you have a lot of competition, and just very small percentage of people would actually become that. So it's kind of like a lottery game that on average it's a losing proposition, but winner get a very nice prize.
Okay. All right. Finally, what is a business model?
So what we discussed, that business model is how you would make money, how you generate value, how you add additional margins, why you would be more efficient, or why customers would love you more than other brands. Kind of like your right to exist and my right to exist consider X, Y, B, and C, and D.
Right. So basically, how this project entity is going to keep making revenue, and not just revenue, profit, because that's how it's going to sustain.
Make
and that's going
profit
to be
better than everyone else in this industry,
that endurance.
or in this niche, or in this market. So it's your decision how you decide your scale and scope, and then you just explain why you would be better in this specific environment.
Right. So a new startup company is giving out nice, beautiful titanium debit cards because that's what they want people to have, titanium debit cards, and they're giving out the first 1,000 for free. They have to come up with a way to essentially figure out a way to recoup that investment of thousand titanium cards. So that's what a business model would be. Okay, that's all I had. Any parting thoughts?
So business model there is like consists of customer, market, way to promote and build awareness, unit economics, pricing and margins, and business case, what would be payback periods for on all of these investments. So for credit cards, the key there would be probably your audience, what your value proposition for those audience, how quickly you can monetize it. For example, is this audience have higher willingness to pay for financial services than other audiences? And what would be the unit economics on offering those services? You probably wouldn't be creating a payment system on your own. So you just would franchise or partner with some existing player and kind of resell them. So you need to know what would be your unit economics on their sales or services, for example, in credit cards.
So, sorry, just before you go then, define unit economics. Does that mean how much profit am I making on every unit of thing that I sold? A service, a session?
So you are given a card. You give a card, there is a price of a card, building, selling, delivering. Before giving a card, you need a lot of marketing, and you need to it takes a lot of money to actually convince a person to take that expensive platinum card. So these are your investments. And after this, there would be some stream of revenues. So they need to generate some kind of a bundle of services. Maybe it would be debit card, maybe there's checking account, and maybe there are some other things, some kind of your monetization. And you need to know, for example, on each of those services, what would be payback periods. Because when you give just a card, for example, credit card, and you attach some different services to this card, maybe you would get money not from a person, but from places where they shop. Maybe you get it from promotions, maybe from something else. What would be the payback on individual services? Because we're talking about monetization, and monetization consists of services themselves. So when you combine all of those payback periods, you would know how much revenue or profit it generates on average, and then how you compare it versus initial investments on marketing, printing, and other services. And then you have upfront cost versus all future revenues. You have payback periods on those, and then you have steady state. So this is at personal level, and then you aggregate at the company, and you say, okay, in a steady state, there is an engine. We continuously invest in marketing, and this is our revenues. And in that steady state, for example, after 5 years, how many clients we would have, and how much revenue would on average would generate, and how much money at the time in the future we would need to invest to sustain our business, considering churn and other issues. And then you divide it by the total number of customers you expect to have on average at the time. And it says, in 5 years, I would be spending per person on average in steady state, considering all the recommendations, word of mouth and everything else, our own marketing, X amount of dollars on getting new customers to, for example, offset previous churn and get growth. I would get in revenue from these people maybe $5 or $10 a month or a year. Out of those, I need to give 5 to company which provided me those services, maybe a big bank or payment system. So I would have 30 cents or $3 in margin. And it should be already in the steady state in the future, more than you spend on growth at the time. So you would get maybe like $2 or $1 as operational profit. And then you would have some kind of SG&A, your own salary of other people, customer service, operational, maintaining a mobile application, maintaining website, and your day-to-day operational general cost per person should be lower than your profit which you generated from a single person. And if it's not, you need to have a clear path to profitability. Otherwise, you need to close this business.
Yes, yes, and also sometimes a clear path of managed decline because demands evolve. Got it. All right. So that is not ending on a sour note because managed decline means something better comes in, mostly. And with that, we will end this episode. So thank you, Vadym, for your time, and we'll see you guys later. Bye bye.
See you.